Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and thank you for stopping by once again. It's been a while since I last came, but I only come when I really feel that I have something to add. I tried to be a little bit more frequent earlier, but this whole business of trying to report the COVID situation and everything on a regular basis just got to be too much. It got sort of overbearing. So the result is that I wait until I get enough information that I think it's worthwhile. And we are moving toward a position where things are shifting, are changing. We hope and pray that it will continue in this light. But yesterday we received 463,000 doses of Pfizer, which we had purchased. We've been very slow in getting our doses, and it's been a great irritation in the past, as I've mentioned more than once. Now, today, we had an additional 503,000 arrive, and those are a gift to the United States. So between the two of them, that's 966,000, just basically 1 million doses of Pfizer, which is 2 doses, meaning 500,000 people can receive them. Now, that's fantastic. I mean, we've never had anything even remotely resembling that much. In fact, we were very pleased to have the 463 in, since sometimes we were lucky to get 40. This was a big step. To have this followed up immediately within 24 hours by an additional 500,000 is great. So we have our work cut out for us, so to speak, and we're ready for it. There's no question about it. We've done over 40,000 in a day, so we can do this fairly rapidly. Although, keeping in mind the fact that we're now really pushing out more and more into the country, some of the provinces, Los Santos, Herrera, for example, or provinces some of you have heard of, they have had outbursts of COVID here and there, and just going in now, and we're doing what's called a sweep. Basically, we're offering it to everybody, and we're taking it into the villages and small towns and little settlements that are scattered around. That's part of the problem, is that we do, you might say it's a problem, it's not really, but anyhow, we have a majority of the population in the metropolitan area. The rest of it's spread out, but in many of the provinces they'll have one city that's really a city, and a central city, an administrative center. And then people are agricultural, they're into all sorts of things, they're just towns and villages and all settlements of all sorts scattered around through the province. And it's not been easy to focus on getting to all of them, because we've gone into the areas that have high concentrations of population. It's much easier to reach a lot of people quickly there, and because they're in contact with each other so regularly, it's important to get to them from a viewpoint of communicable disease. So this is now to a point, though, where because of outbursts here and there in the provinces, they're moving in and they're really getting into the smaller villages and towns, and that's the whole purpose. The Darien, which is way in the Far East, that's another one that's being done very carefully. However, we're continuing to expand this in light of what we have provided now in the way of doses, and the Association of, let's see, what is their formal name? Association of Restaurants, Bars, and Clubs in Panama have now settled down, and they come up with their plan, which will include the vaccination of all their personnel. Now that they know that the vaccine is available, they have that completely done first, and then move into opening up even more so. We're already beginning to lift the curfew. It's going to be from 10 o'clock to midnight in some areas of the country and so forth. We're loosening up, all right, because we've not yet, God helping, us will not be hit by the Delta variant on this stupid virus that's been driving us all crazy. That's what now represents 83% of the cases in the United States. So what we do is we've caught them so far coming in at the airport, so people who do bring them are isolated until such time as they're taken care of. And we haven't had any. Now, that's very fortunate, because that's been a problem in other countries near us, and we really don't want it here. So we want to get the vaccination done. And the Pfizer vaccine has been good at dealing with this variant. So all the more power to them, as we're moving very rapidly. The whole drive here, as the President said, we'd like to be in a position where it can really open up by September 1st, but we'll do it earlier if we can get there. I think the next couple of weeks will be very important, and we'll see how things go. And but so far, we've had a very quiet time of it here, and we're just very pleased. And I was just noticing recently, I just saw some photos, as a matter of fact, in tonight's newspapers on the web. People out in the provinces and the areas where people where they're distributing huge turnouts. I mean, everybody wants this. They want to get it done. They want to get it out of the way. We want to get on with our lives and so forth. So we're very much focused on that, not on politics. So that's as simple as that. So if you don't approve, I'm sorry, but that's the way we are. So hopefully we'll have this society fully open in the not too distant future. Now, otherwise, what's happening here, we'll begin to see people coming back into the city. Now, these are people who were in parts of international businesses. You have a huge community here. You know, we have many, many times more people getting visas as employees of multinational corporations than we do, say, retirees, or even friendly nations visas. The number one category here are these people, thousands of them, who work for the international business community here. And many of them had left during the course of the problem to go back to their own home nations, many of them in Latin America or Asia or Europe and North America, I mean, all over the world. And now they're coming back. And that, you can see them popping up. I see them in my own condo building here. You know, I hadn't seen them for quite a while. And here they are, and that's good to notice. That's helpful. We also have increasing numbers of people coming in at the airport and so forth. We're still far from where we want to be, but we're headed in that direction. Now, from the viewpoint of the real estate situation, which I know interests many of you, I think it'll be interesting to see how this one works out. I'm going to go back now to the collapse of the real estate market, the debacle back in earlier in this century in the United States that caused such a huge loss to so many people. When that occurred, there were a lot of comments here, including in the country among Panamanians, but certainly among expats, that the bottom would fall out of this market. Again, not understanding that Americans in this instance were a minority of the people coming in. So it would have an impact, but not necessarily devastating. Plus, we had much stricter requirements for mortgages when those were sought. And that, again, was different than in the U.S. So it shouldn't have been too bad, but the point was it wasn't bad at all, and particularly in the metropolitan area. And that is during that very period of time, 2009, when we were feeling it the worst, and when it hit both the GDP, the gross domestic product of the United States, and the stock market, for example, all hit their low point in March of 2009. At that stage, we were doing fine. In fact, we were still growing, and we were selling real estate. But it was being predominantly in the metro area, so most of the impact of that was found outside, particularly where North American and European expats, the Boquete, Volcan area, this in the far west, and so on, because that's the sort of people who can afford to live out there, are retirees, basically. Everybody else pretty much needs a job and has kids going to school and what have you, will be in the metro area. And that was when the Venezuelans started to arrive, and the numbers were dramatic. I came up with the statistics sometime after that and just pointed them out to people who said the rest of the world started counting them, the refugees, in 2014, 15, right about there, and they'll say since 2015, X number of people have been refugees from Venezuela. It started in 2009, actually started earlier than that, but it started in sizable numbers here in 2009. Now, many of these were, of course, upper income people and upper middle income, and then later on middle income people coming down. There were people who were in a position to purchase a home. And they came from, I might add, both sides of the dispute, because this is the days of Hugo Chavez, and his people were also buying condos down here in fear that something might happen up in Caracas and they'd have to have a place to go. So they purchased, or sometimes had their families living here where they continued. I mean, it was just tense for a while in the beginning because we had both groups and they really truly despised each other here at the same time getting things sorted out. And there was one evening when there was some disturbance and trouble, and the President of the Republic here, our President, came out and read the riot act on the television and said, "You will not do this." We don't do that here in Panama. We don't riot. We don't get into face-to-face confrontations and scream and shout and all that. And he made it very clear that regardless of political viewpoint, no one's ever doubted that we have been supportive of the people of Venezuela as they dealt with this situation. But it doesn't allow for this sort of activity. And that was the end of it. I mean, he came down hard, and sometimes that's necessary to do because people from other societies have a different history of how they respond to these sorts of things and how they deal with each other politically, and you just have to, we don't do it, and we don't want it, so we say no, and that's what happened. So these folks of different backgrounds and what have you, whether they liked it or not, we're all living here, and many of them set up businesses, and they purchased homes, and they moved here. We've had people coming after that, but again, the people who've moved here are generally speaking people of some income. We've had some of the least people with less income, lower income people who've been able to get the airfare to come here, but you're going to come. Venezuelans come by air. If they're going to walk, they go that long route through Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and so forth. They don't walk here. So they had a huge impact, and they really helped get us through this to the extent that the Northerners and North Americans and Europeans reduced their home sales, home purchases. This time around, we don't have quite that same situation in many respects, thankfully, in terms of Venezuela, but we do have other countries in South America having serious problems. The challenge is, though, is that many of them are not well vaccinated, and they have the Delta virus, and they have lost control in some instances. It's just a very messy situation. And one of those countries that's had a lot of difficulty is Peru. And now Peru is a country of, 37 million people. It's about 9 times the size of Panama in terms of population. And has had a very difficult election where 2 candidates of many, neither one of whom got much, I think it was about 20% of the vote each, something of that sort, had a runoff and came out almost exactly the same. Now, I'm not going to talk anymore about that election. That's a nice controversial election in Peru and so forth. We are well aware of that, and we're sorry for them. And they're having a time down there. On top of which, they've had some difficulty in getting this vaccine out. They haven't done well with that. There's a lot of problems. I have friends in Peru, and I've been to Peru, and I know how complicated things can get in Peru, and there are all sorts of stresses and strains in that society. They're also a very active economy, and they've been a very successful economy. So you've got this combination of a lot of things going right, but a lot of things not going right, and particularly right now, a lot of tension going between various people as they try to figure out what's going to happen next. And Panamanians is very pragmatic about this. This is a business country, and we look at this and say, okay, maybe they're going to be coming next. And indeed, we have a trade mission down there right now, from the private sector down in Lima, as I talk to you, and talking about investing in Panama and so forth. And you bet there's a lot of talk going on mile a minute down there because we're knowing this is where people come when there's trouble. And they're really, really worried about it. They just don't do that for any reason. They do it because they're seriously concerned. If that's the case, and then Panama's traditionally been the place for people to come because we do not allow that sort of violence, and we don't give people a political test when they walk in the door, okay? And we've had all sorts of former presidents of Guatemala and things like this who've lived here. And for those of you who are old enough to remember the Shah of Iran and his overthrow, Panama was one of the places he stayed as he was trying to get his life put together after that. And I wasn't here too long, but this has been a standard here. So it could be if this happens and they're able to convince us that they don't carry the Delta variant or whatever, and it's very possibly it's going to be the case. they may come up. If they do, then that will have a dramatic impact on the city's market. That has not yet happened, and people will tell you, "Oh, yes, we're beginning to see this." Yeah, well, very little at this stage. Wait, we're watching it unfold. People want to give you the sense that everything's just boom like that, and we're going back to normal again, but we're not. All right, it's going to take time, and there certainly are still a lot of people who are quite willing to bargain and get prices down and so on. If this does happen, that will mean that the city market will begin to stabilize a little earlier, well, definitely earlier than it would otherwise. So that's, I just mentioned that in passing. It's not a panic thing or anything of the sort, but it's a reminder that it's not just people in North America and Europe that we think about when we think about expats. I've mentioned this many times. I need to mention it again. Yeah, South Americans are very numerous. Many of them come in, and Latin Americans in general. And one of the reasons it's so difficult to get citizenship in Panama is because Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru all by themselves have 100 million people. If we made it easy for people, they're all, can come in under various visa schemes. If they all became, or even a substantial number of them became citizens here, Panamanians would be outnumbered very quickly. So that's not going to happen. That's, again, one of the reasons why the country provides people with everything except citizenship. And there are a lot of people here. The guy who cut my hair, he's Colombian. He's married to a Panamanian. He has kids here. He isn't a citizen. He'd be perfectly happy to become a citizen. But they're very, very, very careful about this. They'll give you a nice long-term visa, let you work, et cetera, and so forth. But citizenship and the right to vote and to have a passport and what have you, and to call yourself a Panamanian citizen, that is not handed out easily, and that's just the way it is. So, with that in mind, the Peruvians should be coming in, therefore, would not be coming seeking citizenship or anything of that sort. They'd be coming in order to find safe haven from their current situation. And if that happens, that will change things. So I wanted to at least bring you up to date on that. I think the most important news for you may be this sudden dramatic increase in doses and the increase in activity to spread this around. If we can get this done and keep the Delta variant out there and not let it in the back door, one thing or another, then we could get up to our level of herd immunity a lot faster and feel a lot more comfortable, particularly in the areas where you're most interested, where most of the people live, not just the city, but also the areas in the countryside that expats tend to look at. It would be a great joy, and it would be much easier for everybody involved. So but you can always come. We definitely have people coming down, and no question about it. And I have people scheduled later this month and then on into August. So if you're down, that's great. Maybe I'll see some of you when you're here. But I want you to know that we're finally making some progress that looks fairly substantial, and that's why I'm here tonight. I'm going to get back to you again. Now my next thing I want to focus in on a little bit more is discussing different areas from a perspective of living without one of these sort of a pretty tour of look at the beautiful buildings, blah, 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 but more just talking about the practicalities of living here and what you get, what you don't, and so on. So until then, thank you very much for your patience and for stopping by, and I look forward to talking to you soon.